Ile ameleta saratani ya kizazi, tuchukue tu kwa ujumla saratani kiujumla, kwa sababu saratani katika nchi yetu ya Kenya iko na njia mingi ambayo inadhuru wananchi, na kama tutasema ya kwamba tuende tu na saratani ya kizazi peke yake, basi tutapoteza watu wengi ambao wanaugua saratani ambayo sio ya kizazi. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, na kurudishia shukran kunipea nafasi kuchangia katika huu mswada, na narudishia Mheshimiwa Tekla Tum shukran kubwa. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Very well, honorable members, I was very keen to have at least 2 other lady members of parliament contribute to this based on the subject. But look, it is 12:25. We have more than 15 members who want to speak to this. But as you know, within our rules, this motion is time-bound. It was started at 12:25, so at 12:34, not 12:34, 12:24, the mover shall have 10 minutes to reply. But the mover could be gracious enough to donate part of that 10 minutes to any member. But the mover now, it is your time to reply. I'm told you it is Honorable Halima, for and on behalf of Honorable Tekla Tum. Yes, Honorable Halima Musheke. Order, yes, you need to be on record.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Before I contribute and reply, I wish to donate 2 minutes each to Honorable John Mburu and Honorable Janet, my neighbors here. Thank you.
Honorable Mburu.
Thank you, Madam Musheke. Halima, I'm not the one who is donating. It is Halima who is donating. So
Honorable Mburu, you know you have time,
yeah,
limited
thank
time.
You. I'm in support of this motion. You should protect me, Speaker. This one is making noise to me. You know, we are in support of this order. I've been going around and I've seen many doctors.
Order, Honorable Mburu. What is out of order, Honorable Nyaga Nkanda?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to request Honorable Halima, instead of giving 2, you should give 1 each so that we can also have an opportunity, if possible. Yes. Thank you.
Order, Honorable Nyaga. She has already given. We can't take that back.
I think Halima has
order, Honorable Mburu. Yes. Order, Honorable Mburu. Honorable Halima, possibly, she could still donate you 1 more minute after the 2 have spoken. But for now, we have Honorable Mburu to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm hoping that mine is not started counting yet because they are interrupting me. But we are in support of this so much. We are in support of early screening of cancer. And I have seen doctors going with some gadgets. Some international gadgets are coming into Kenya that they are supposed to screen cancer, cervical and breast cancer. I hope the government should be able also to monitor these gadgets that are coming in. They are saying that they can move around with them so that you can be tested on the spot anywhere. Then we'll also have a lot of fake testing and fake screening. So we should have a process of making sure that the gadgets that are coming in are well checked so that they don't give false alarms and false reports. But I'm in support that we should have early screening of cancer. We should teach our children to have hygiene. We should also be against early sex and also sex everywhere. Because cervical cancer is transmitted, this HPV virus is transmitted through sex. And we should also teach our children that when they are doing sex, they should have safe sex. I think as I support Madam Lillian Gogo, the way she said that we have to have sex education, I think it is an issue of priority now today, so that we can be able to protect cervical cancer and other cancers. Thank you, Madam Halima, and God bless you.
Honorable CTNA.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, and I want to thank Mheshimiwa Halima for giving me 1 minute. I also stand to support this motion. And at the onset, I want to thank Honorable Tekla Tum for bringing this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, most of the poverty that is realized in the villages at the moment is because of the bills that are incurred by our people because of this disease called cancer, which is one of the leading causes of death in our nation today. And cervical cancer is also one of the leading causes of death to women. And therefore, I support this motion and request that the government allow free cancer screening for women and also issuance of the HPV, human papilloma virus vaccine, to our boys and girls in schools to be able to prevent the onset of cancer and also for early treatment of cancer. And at the same time, I want to request that the government could also get some money put aside in for research of cancer in this nation. I also want to say that KEBS should up their game. Because cancer is one of the lifestyle diseases, they should be able to maintain standards of the foods that are imported into our country and even the inputs that we use in planting our crops, that KEBS should actually take lead in maintaining those standards. Finally, I also want to say that we want to request that we put some money aside to reduce the cost of drugs for treatment of cancer, but more so preventive.
Honorable Harima, did you donate any further?
Honorable Speaker, the demand is too high, so I'm not sure that I'm able to still donate. Unless I can donate half a minute, maybe, to Honorable Zambia, Honorable Eika, and Honorable Nkat. Half a minute each.
What do they say in half a minute? But anyway, yes, Honorable Kitonga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me thank the Honorable colleague for just donating a minute to actually contribute on this motion. Firstly, having now in our knowledge that everybody is now aware that we have this epidemic by the name cancer, it is now the time. Now the government involves itself to conduct civic education even up to the village levels, so that now people can understand better what this cancer is. What I can actually say is that we need to invest a lot in the research as a government. So I urge the government to actually set aside some good money so that we can conduct enough research to know and educate people on the correct and to make aware and create awareness to our people, so that there are a lot of narratives going around.
Honorable Mizigi Mnene.
Shukran sana Mr. Speaker kwa kunipatia fursa hiyo. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Musheke kwa kunipatia pia fursa hiyo na mimi niweke sauti yangu hapa kwa kuhusiana na masuala haya ya hii saratani. Na Mr. Speaker, nitasema kwa ufupi ya kwamba namshukuru Daktari Tum kwa kuleta mswada huu kwa sababu saratani kwa sasa imekuwa ndo wakati mwafaka wa kuiongelea, kwa sababu tumeona tumepoteza wenzetu kwa sababu ya saratani hii. Na nitasema ya kwamba kwa mswada huu kuongeza tu ni kwamba tupimwe, kila mtu apimwe saratani, si vijana peke yake ama wasichana, hata wazee, hata kina mama, sote tupimwe. Alafu niseme kwamba serikali ni wakati iwekeze zaidi kwa masuala ya saratani ili tuweze kupata madaktari wenye ufahamu wa mambo ya saratani, manasi, na tuwe na vifaa dhabiti vya kuweza kutusaidia katika matibabu, na pia kutengwe pesa kwa ajili ya
Honorable Nyaga, I'm afraid 30 seconds was quite a little time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mheshimiwa Harima, for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, it's very important that we screen cancer before it grows. It is said that prevention is better than cure, Mr. Speaker, and we need to do exactly that. The Kenya government does not have enough resources, Mr. Speaker, to cater for the cancer, either cervical or any other cancer, Mr. Speaker. Kenyans are suffering, Mr. Speaker. They cannot afford the treatment of cancer because it is quite expensive. So we need to support our Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, and also do a lot of civic education, train them, so that they can be able to know when to go for the screening. It is also important to talk to our young boys and young girls because cancer is affecting everyone, the old and the young. So the government is supposed to have enough resources so that we can be able to take care of our Kenyans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall we now have Honorable Arima? I can tell Honorable Nzamba walked all the way to thank you for donating a bit of time to him. But now, Honorable Arima, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to also add my voice to this very important motion that was brought to the floor of this House by Honorable Toom, who is away on official duty. Honorable Speaker, as all the members have rightly put it, cancer has become a monster that is so scary and needs to be faced with all the might and resources. I remember, Mr. Speaker, when HIV had become so serious, we used to be told that you are either affected or infected. Today, the same can be said of cancer. Honorable Speaker, early screening is very important, and this can help curb most deaths that are caused by the cancer that is detected at the 3rd and the 4th stage. Early screening is also makes treatment easy. As I saw recently, Honorable Speaker, I had traveled to India on official duty, but I took time off to seek treatment for myself and checkup. Honorable Speaker, I met very many Kenyans there in India, and most of them were there due to cancer. Honorable Speaker, it is very expensive, and it is also very draining emotionally. You find that most of the people have to go to India with their relatives, or aides, or maybe a family member, and they have to seek accommodation despite the expenses they need in treatment. Honorable Speaker, I also got to learn that there are particular painkillers that we are taking here back home, that we prescribe for ourselves, that we administer just on the counters of the chemists, that are very dangerous. And Kenyans need to know that painkillers, I don't want to mention the particular painkiller, but there's a particular painkiller that is causing kidney failure. Maybe whoever wants to know more can look for me privately, I'll inform them. Honorable Speaker, as we have heard from most of the speakers, cancer is preventable. And especially this particular cancer, the cervix cancer, can be prevented. And therefore, that is why the mover of this motion decided to deal with cervical cancer, because it is easy to vaccinate and also prevent. Honorable Speaker, according to researchers affiliated to the National Cancer Institute of Kenya, the cost of vaccinating against cancer would average at 15,000 for all the 3 injections per person, while the cost of treating cancer ranges between 172,000 and 759,000 Kenya shillings. And when surgery is involved, the cost ranges between 672,000 and 1.25 million. Honorable Speaker, I can see that I don't have a lot of time, but I want to comment about a particular video that has been, video clip that has been doing rounds. Back in 2010, I saw a video whereby the Honorable Kioni was asking the then CEO of KEBS about maize that had been released to the market. And that maize was believed to have aflatoxin. And Mr. Mangeli put it that in 10 or so years, the effects of the aflatoxin that was in the maize would be felt. And I think that is what is happening to Kenyans right now. We are feeling the effects of the maize that we consumed 10 years early, and therefore it is important for our government to get serious. And also, when we know such...
You reply. Give her a chance to say you reply.
With those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I wish to reply. I beg to reply.
Very well, very well, Honorable Halima. What is it, Honorable Duarte? What is the intervention for?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wanted to request under Section 53 of the Standard Orders, we defer putting of the question to another time.
Well, in the circumstances, I agree with you. We shall pay putting the question on that particular motion to a subsequent time. Allow me to recognize at the Speaker's Gallery, Wero Secondary School from Oljororo constituency, Nyandarua County, and the public gallery, we have Rian Academy, Bureti constituency, Kericho County. We also have in Kudhika, Sunday School, from Igambangombe constituency, Tharaka-Nithi County. We also have DB Kadhambi Primary School from Igembe South constituency, Meru County. They are all welcome to follow the proceedings of the National Assembly. What is it, Honorable Limo? Joseph, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, this morning we had requested the Speaker to allow us to table a report, which is very important, and I was only alerting you, Mr. Speaker, that I'm ready to table.
Okay, yes, that is in line with the Speaker's direction earlier on. Please, please proceed. Was it just tabling or even motion?
I'll table the report and then move a notice of motion.
You may table.
All right. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, August 7, 2019. Report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on the acquisition of National Bank of Kenya by Kenya Commercial Bank Group PLC. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Should you proceed on the notice?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on the acquisition of National Bank of Kenya by Kenya Commercial Bank Group PLC, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, August 7, 2019. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 11, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 6 of 2019, second reading.
Okay, very well, honorable members. The mover of that, the second reading of that bill, Honorable Didi Nyoro, had actually part moved the second reading of that bill, and Honorable Didi Nyoro isn't present now, so we'll step that down because he needs to complete the remaining part that he had to move that bill. So in the circumstances, we'll put that down and then get to the next order.
Order number 12, the Employment Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2019, second reading.
Honorable Mother Wangari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move the Employment Amendment Bill 2019. And Mr. Speaker, this bill is a straightforward bill. It's a bill that relates to something that has been previously seen as an unconventional way of starting a family. it's a bill relating to adoption, Mr. Speaker. The infertility rates in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, have not been so documented, but the doctors estimate that in every healthy population, 10% suffer from infertility, Mr. Speaker. And there are many ways of becoming parents, Mr. Speaker, one of them being adoption, Mr. Speaker. The challenge in the Employment Act, as it is, Mr. Speaker, is that if I adopt a baby today, even if it's 6 weeks old or 1 month old, I do not get a break at all in terms of a leave, maternity leave or paternity leave for men. So this is to expand the meaning and the accommodation of maternity and paternity leave. That is guided by Article 53 of the Constitution, where the rights of the child have actually been taken care of, the right to parental care has been taken care of, the right to be protected has been taken care of, Mr. Speaker. As we speak today, 50,000 children are in children's home, Mr. Speaker. About 600 of them will eventually be adopted, maybe by the end of the year. But so many fall along the way because the adoption societies, Mr. Speaker, require that you stay with the child for a continuous 3 months to be able to be assessed and given the go-ahead. And the adoption process in this country, Mr. Speaker, is quite tedious because you have to apply and make a formal application, Mr. Speaker, with an adoption agency. You have to declare your financial capacity of taking care of a child. You have to be of proper mental capacity. You must not be a convict. You must not have been convicted in court or in jail, Mr. Speaker. And you must diverge as much information at that stage as possible. What happens after you apply, Mr. Speaker, for formal adoption, for formal application, Mr. Speaker? You'll get a social worker. If the adoption society feels that you could adopt a baby, Mr. Speaker, you are given a social worker. This social worker will be with you at your workplace, will talk to your family members, will talk to your friends, will talk to people who know you to be able to say whether you are capable of bringing a child home, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after that, you'll get a counselor. You have to be taken through what it means to adopt a child who is not biologically yours. What that means, Mr. Speaker, is that every member of the family who is expected to stay with that child will be taken through a counseling process. And at the end of the day, the Ministry of Labor, through the National Adoption Committee, will select a selection committee that will actually get the report from the social worker and will get the report from the counselor. They will say, so-and-so is not of mental capacity to have a child or to have a child home. So they may reject your application, but if they agree that you go on with the adoption, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly where now the process begins. Mr. Speaker, today we have spoken about children a lot in this house. How women sometimes have to choose between having their babies and going to work. If you are living in Rongai and you have been given a go-ahead to adopt a child who is 2 months, and the adoption society wants to see you, how you stay with that child, they want to see continuous interaction. For you to be at work at 8 in the morning, you leave Rongai at 5 a.m. By the time you go back, it is 10 p.m. at night. Most people fail that test, not because they are not compatible with the children, but because they don't get the chance to be able to demonstrate that they have the capacity to be able to go ahead with the adoption, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is where this bill comes in. If you read Article 29 of the Mother Bill, that is the Employment Act, as it is today, it contemplates leave for only biological children, not the ones that are brought forward through surrogacy. And surrogacy here, Mr. Speaker, means someone else renting a womb, as it's called. That if I'm not able to carry a child, I can rent a womb and someone else carries that child. You are not given maternity leave to bond with your child, even when you're the commissioning parent. It also applies to the adoptive children, Mr. Speaker. And every time a child stays in a children's home, when they are below 3 months or they are below 6 months, Mr. Speaker, they lose 1 month of development. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, this is to expand that meaning and to be able to encourage as more people to do the adoption, Mr. Speaker. I know many questions have been raised on how it's done, Mr. Speaker, but I want to say that the laws are very clear. Our Children's Act is very clear. There are people who cannot adopt children. If you are a lone person from the US, from outside the country, you can't just come in and adopt a child. It's a tedious process, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, it ends to court. It is the court that actually gives a go-ahead to be able to take a child home. It also gives you a time that you cannot travel with that child outside the country, Mr. Speaker. So this Article 29 is actually discriminative to parents who start families through other means. It is discriminative to those that cannot be able to biologically bear children, and it does not encourage the taking of the many children that we are having in children's homes, Mr. Speaker, home to where they can be taken care of and cared for by proper families. Mr. Speaker, I know we have had a lot of social breakdown in this country. We have had children being thrown in pits, children being killed, even people who suffer from postpartum and are not able to take care of a child, they just kill them. Mr. Speaker, if we are able to make adoption easier and more straightforward in this country, we'll get so many of these children off the streets, we'll get them out of the children's homes, and we'll be able to give them proper homes and conducive areas where they can grow up to be productive members of the society. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this bill will be able to look into those issues, especially Children's Act number 8 of 01, Article 157. It clearly said that a child to be adopted must be under continuous care of the applicant for a period of at least 3 months consecutive. That means, Mr. Speaker, if you are not able to do consecutive months, you lose out because you're not able to demonstrate that part of Article 157. Mr. Speaker, by having the employers actually recognize that these are also parents, we'll be able to open up and give more people the go-ahead to be able to bring more children home, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of placement of a child is very critical. And as I was explaining in the statement and the process, Mr. Speaker, is that when you have been cancelled and a report has been favorable to you, they will look for a child that closely resembles you for obvious reasons. That is what we call matching. So that the questions don't arise, the stigma associated with it, but you're not allowed to choose as an applicant, Mr. Speaker. The Adoption Society places a child in your care after they have compared how you look as a couple, if you are the adopting parent, and they will be able to give you a child that closely looks either like you or like your wife, or a combination of both. That is how it is, Mr. Speaker. And the reason is that we also don't want to give a scenario where people want to choose designer babies, Mr. Speaker. That's what they are called in the adoption world. That they just want the very beautiful, the yellow. That is how you end up just choosing. It does not happen, Mr. Speaker. The law is very clear. The Children's Act is very clear. And at the end of the day, that process does not take a day. It takes almost 6 months. It takes even up to a year, Mr. Speaker, depending on how the process flows. Mr. Speaker, I have gotten a lot of interest on this bill. And I know, and I want to appreciate the Committee of Labor and Social Welfare. They sat and scrutinized this bill. They called for public participation. Adoption societies were able to represent their views. Adoption parents were able to represent their views. And what, Mr. Speaker, was very obvious is that they brought out from their report that the need to balance between the employer and the employee in terms of giving them a break. And I know I've also been asked by lawyers, Mr. Speaker. I have one letter here from A&K, or Anjwara and Kana, and they actually put their views that they feel that the fact that we have put in the bill just married women and men, it feels like it's actually unconstitutional and discriminates from single parents from adoption. And I tend to agree to some extent, Mr. Speaker, because most of the people who adopt are actually single parents. And there are rules for single parents to adopt. If I'm a woman, the child must be 1 year younger than me. I must be an adult, at least 25 years and above. And you must demonstrate the capacity to bring up a child. And the same applies to men, Mr. Speaker. Of course, more women adopt. And because more women adopt, Mr. Speaker, more girls are adopted because you're not supposed to adopt. There are tougher rules to adopt a boy if you're a woman, or to adopt a girl if you're a man, for obvious reasons, Mr. Speaker. That means then more boys are left in the children's orphanages as we speak today, and they grow up to 18 years. And those are also societal concerns, Mr. Speaker. But this bill, Mr. Speaker, restricts not to just the process, but to opening up the issue of maternity leave. We want to make it uniform by other people, like other people who get the children biologically. And Mr. Speaker, that's why we have saying the women get 3 months and the man gets 2 weeks. But the issue of age, Mr. Speaker, is something that we'll also consider at the committee stage. I want to confirm to this House that we also don't want to leave it very open, that we want to say infants, 1 year and below, so that we can be able to avoid abuse of the process. When you're adopting a child who is 10 years, you cannot be claiming to get maternity leave, Mr. Speaker. This is to apply for infants from 6 weeks, as by the law, all the way to 1 year of age, Mr. Speaker, where we can be able to apply this maternity leave. Mr. Speaker, I want to move with those many remarks and say that the laws as it is, Mr. Speaker, we must also look at the adoption process and make it easier. Our Child Welfare Society has done a lot of work in that, Mr. Speaker, in terms of scanning the statistics. But if you go to Sharia House today, it is very difficult to get this data. It is very difficult because it's in mystery. People don't find it conventional. People don't want to talk about adoption. People have stigma against adopted kids. They want to call them bought kids. I know that happens a lot out there, that you are bought. Mr. Speaker, we also must protect the right of the child as per Article 53, Section 2. And that data, Mr. Speaker, must also be available. Mr. Speaker, the issue of trading of children and labor and taking children out of this country has also been raised, especially by the public. I want to confirm that our laws are very stringent. You can even be placed with a child 6 months and you cannot travel with that child outside the country, because you must show from the court that you have actually been given the right, you have processed the birth certificate that includes your name. It is a whole process, Mr. Speaker. So I want to confirm that the fears that have been raised have been addressed, and I hope that members can look at this issue, Mr. Speaker. And I know the committee also raised the issue of surrogacy, so that we combine it with this bill, that if you are the commissioning parent, as they are called, the owner of the child, so to say, in the rented womb, you also have some rights to bond with your child, and that, Mr. Speaker, will come during the committee stage. But with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I hope that many members will be able to follow this and save so many people, so many children out there who are languishing in children's homes, and yet they could be going home somewhere warm, somewhere they can be taken care of, and somewhere they can be appreciated, and we will reduce the stigma that is associated with adoption, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move, and I ask Honorable Dan Manzo to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second this bill and say that it is very important. One, it's going to synchronize laws related to children, including the Constitution. And two, the rights of children are supreme. Three, Mr. Speaker, when a new parent or a parent adopts new children, and most of them are in homes and they are pretty young, Mr. Speaker, they do not have that particular right as the parents who've gotten children normally. And when these new children go to this particular parent or couple, Mr. Speaker, they don't have the time to relate with them, to associate with them, to bond with them. And this is the reason why this bill is important, and I'm seconding it, so that we also equalize, we give equal rights also to these parents, so that they could also get a leave which is within law, by the time they have that particular leave, they are able to bond with these children. In a lot of scenarios, and we have a lot of abandoned children, Mr. Speaker, when children are in that scenario, they need love, they need to be taken care of, they need to have parents, and that relationship of adopted children with the adopter should be, it should be, they are real children of those particular parents. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, there are very many people, adoptee children, a lot of them are unable to have children normally, and therefore they want to extend their love to others who may not have an opportunity like them. And Mr. Speaker, as the law is now, Mr. Speaker, some rights have been denied to these particular children be adopted and to the particular parents, Mr. Speaker. And for that matter, the Honorable Wagari has synchronized that, so that that gap which is there in law, Mr. Speaker, and is the duty of this House, we could now cover it up, and we'll make sure that the rights of parents, the rights of children, labor laws, the Constitution, children laws are all synchronized, so that, Mr. Speaker, we do not leave a gap for anyone, and we do not leave the laws having loose ends. And I believe it's a great service to this nation, and especially to homeless children, most of them abandoned by young mothers, most of them likely to live without love. Most of them are having been aborted, thrown into pit latrines. These are the sort of children picked, and then with the stringent regime of law of adoption, we have made sure as a parliament that there are no loose ends. And this was the only thing probably left, which we now want to tie up as part of our responsibility as parliament. And it is also a way of extending our love, Mr. Speaker, to these children who God has given Kenya and has given our people. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second. I thank you.
Honorable Manzo, I was almost telling you that we will have to finish in the next time this is sorted, but you quickly concluded, which is fine. Honorable members, order members, I will propose a question. Honorable members, I will propose a question that the Employment Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2019, be read a second time. Honorable members, I saw you stood because it's one, but before we conclude, allow me to recognize a school, Elite Heritage, from Kasarani constituency, Nairobi County. The debate on that having been seconded, will proceed the next time this is sorted in the order paper by the House Business Committee. Honorable members, the time being 1 minute after 1 p.m., this House started adjourned till today, Wednesday, 7th August 2019 at 2:30 p.m.